Hey everybody, Crystal Katsuna here with this week's episode of Crystal's Book Club. Now, you'll probably be disappointed in me because I didn't finish Wicked, but I have a good reason. I only got so far in it before I decided to stop. um, wow. I wasn't expecting this book to be as it is. It's definitely not a children's book, let's put it that way. I was expecting to find sort of a Disney thing where it's like we still are keeping to the story, but we're showing like another side, like the other side of the coin or whatever. But no, it is, but no, definitely not a Disney version. The first chapter alone had vulgarity in it, and I'm all like, no. So basically, I got through what I did, and I was not happy, and I was not entertained, and I did not want to continue reading. Basically, I was disgusted and appalled of this book. I mean, for some people, maybe it's cool and interesting and, according to The New Yorker, an amazing novel. But not for me. I like versions of The Wizard of Oz to still be for kids. I grew up reading The Wizard of Oz, and I grew up, watching the movie and all that kind of stuff like that. There's no vulgarity, there's no, innuendos and everything like that. This girl, Elphaba or Faba or whatever like that, who is the Wicked Witch of the West, has a slut for a mother. For real. I mean, I was like, really? It's just not for me. Maybe it gets better. I seriously doubt it. I'm sorry if you read along and you, finished it or whatever, or still in the process of reading it, but you don't have to finish it. You don't have to read this book. Only if you want to. I'm not telling you which way or other, what to do. I only got that far. This little bit right here. That's all I read, and I just decided not to. I mean, the premise, the prologue mentions, Dorothy and all that, whatever. But it's the way they were talking, doesn't sound like she's a kid. It sounds like she's an adult. Or at least her companions are sick in the head or whatever. I'm not going to read this or anything. I'm just going to say, if you want to read it, read it. If you don't want to read it, I'm not going to force you to read it. I'm not going to finish this book because I do not want to have my mind warped to the fact that it's I'm set into the thing where The Wizard of Oz is a good, wholesome story, and this isn't good and wholesome, and it's probably only going to get worse from here. And the bad thing is, supposedly the Wicked Witch of the West or whatever is a hermaphrodite, which really throws me, so it's get this away from me. So, I don't have any books yet that I can read, that I haven't read yet. I went through my room and I was like, read it. Can't reread it. So I brought two books, or two things that I'm going to suggest instead. And when I go out, again, I'm going to hit the thrift store and look for some books to read. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So I'm going to leave the damn allergy season. Oh, sorry about that. So the first thing, it's not really a book per se. It's a graphic novel, and you're all saying it's oh yeah, it's graphic novels, you're an anime nerd or a manga nerd or whatever. This isn't manga, or superheroes or anything like that. This is actually mentioning back to the if you watched my last nostalgia corner, I mentioned these books called these magazines called Adventure Magazine, and they had comics and stuff in it. And I remember very well in, I don't know, let's see what date these, 91 and 92, Yeah, probably about in there. This comic that was like really pretty, and it was cute, and I was like, this is like unlike any of the other, because it wasn't a Disney comic. It was actually a comic that like looked like it belonged like in a comic book or whatever, not in adventure magazine. So I was like, when I went to the thrift store at one time, I saw like this comic in like a book form, and it's like 9 issues. They're really thin, most of them are, and it's like they were like only $1.99. I was like, mine, and I got up to number 5. So even I haven't read all of this yet. So I guess it's technically kind of a thing that I haven't read into its entirety. I have 1 through 5, and I still need the remaining 4 to make up to 9, because I can math. So the thing that I'm talking about, and you're all like, I was like, show us already, damn it. So this is the comic. It's called Bone, and it's a cute little like story about this character and his 2 cousins, and I'll read the synopsis on the back of it for you. It says, after being run out of Boneville, the 3 Bone cousins, Phone Bone, Phony Bone, and Smiley Bone, are separated and lost in a vast, uncharted desert. One by one, they find their way into a deep forested valley filled with wonderful and terrifying creatures. Eventually, the cousins are reunited at a farmstead run by tough Grandma Ben and their spirited granddaughter Thorn. But little do the Bones know that there are dark forces conspiring, cannot spell or say words, against them, and their adventures are only just beginning. And I only like did part of this one, I think, or maybe I missed a couple issues of the magazine to where I didn't get the entirety of this particular one. I think they only did about this one. Yeah, they did this one. They only did up to this one. After that, they just stopped doing it. But it's done by Jeff Smith, and they have like a version where it's like the whole entire thing in one book. I saw it at Barnes & Noble. But I just got these little ones individual, and I was going to try to buy them individual at the Barnes & Noble, but they didn't have them individual. They just had the big one. So I have to get them later on online if I want to continue the story and find out how it ends. But it's actually pretty interesting, and the artwork is really nice. It's really pretty. So I suggest this book graphic novel series to anybody who likes, this kind of stuff. It's a cute story. So, I mean, there's nothing too violent. I mean, there's like light violence, I guess you could say, but it's nothing like blood and gore and guts and everything like that. So, it's really tame. It's really pretty. So yeah, I suggest that you look up Bone. It's a cute little comic. Now, the second book that I have, I've been looking for this everywhere. Been wanting to do this book on this series since I started, basically. I wanted to have this book as the first book that I suggest everybody to read because it's a very good story. Most of you probably read this book in high school or, elementary school or something like that, which is what happened to me. I first read this book in elementary school. And, like when you're a kid that age and you have this kind of book, you just kind of like skim through it and just get the gist, and then you can do like your report or whatever and then get it over with. Later on, like when I got older and I like still had the copy of this book, and I'm like, I'm going to read this, and I'm going to read it like, real. Like read it for real. And I'm like, I was just kind of like blown away, I guess. I mean, I already knew what the story was about, so there was like spoilers or whatever. But I wanted to read, as an adult. And I wanted to read the story as an older person so I could get the story or get what was going on. I mean, everybody's heard of this person. If you haven't, then you're living under a rock. It's not like one of those, fiction books where everyone is like, it's not like Pride and Prejudice, which bored me. I couldn't even get past the first chapter on Pride and Prejudice. It's not like To Kill a Mockingbird or whatever. It's an actual real book about a real person. And like I said, most people have heard about this person. Most people probably have read this book in school. But I suggest that if you're older like me and you haven't reread it, do. And this is the book that I'm talking about. And this is The Diary of Anne Frank, or The Diary of a Young Girl, Anne Frank. Like, most of you, I mean, probably don't want to read this because of what happens to, her family and everything. I mean, everybody knows that, she gets, in the end, her family ends up getting caught by the Nazis and sent to concentration camps. So there's no spoilers because everybody knows that's what happens. Because it's history, people. But to actually read her words, to have, get inside her head and basically, like, relive everything that had happened to her, from, when they first went into the hiding to the day that they actually got caught. I keep getting a frog in my throat. I'm not choked up, I just keep getting a frog in my throat. But this book, it was sitting on my dresser, actually gathering dust, because I put things places and I forget about them, and they end up getting lost somewhat. I'll read the back for you, and then I'll give my, interpretation of what I thought about the book. And, okay, so, discovered it in the attic in which she spent the last years of her life, Anne Frank's remarkable diary has since become a world classic. A powerful reminder of the horrors of war and an eloquent testament to the human spirit. In 1942, with Nazis occupying Holland, a 13-year-old Jewish girl and her family fled their home in Amsterdam and went into hiding for the next 2 years until their whereabouts were betrayed to the Gestapo, and they and another family lived cloistered in the secret annex of an old office building. Cut off from the outside world, they faced hunger, boredom, and the constant cruelties of living in confined quarters, an ever-present threat of discovery and death. In her diary, Anne Frank recorded vivid impressions of her experience during this period, by turns thoughtful, moving, and amusing. Her account offers a fascinating commentary on human courage and frailty, and the compelling self-portrait of a sensitive and spirited young woman whose promise was tragically cut short. So, when I first read this book as a kid, I was like, this was assigned to me as, a thing where I had to read it, do a report or whatever about it. So I basically just read it to get the information that I needed, and then, forgot about it. Well, most of, the inner more workings of it. But when I reread it, I, read it with fresh eyes, basically, and I was, very moved and very, it was very thought-provoking, because, a lot of people will say they have a rough life, and it's usually just something superficial that, you're used to having this and you don't have it anymore, so your life sucks. Like, if your cell phone broke or something and you don't have cell phone service for a month or whatever, I was like, my life sucks because my cell phone broke or whatever, or my laptop broke, whatever. We are so, addicted to this kind of stuff that, it's basically like smoking and trying to quit smoking. It's like if you go through withdrawals, and it can be unhealthy. I mean, I'm trying not to call the pot calling the kettle black, because I do the exact same thing. I'm on the computer from point, whenever I can to whenever I can't, so I'm on it for a real long time, and so I'm trying not to be contradictory to what I'm saying, but I mean, everybody who, has a laptop or whatever, well, not everybody, but most of the people who have laptops and cell phones are, glued to those things. But for me, it's just I can live without it, I just don't want to. But yeah, I'm getting off topic. But this is, a girl who didn't have a choice to do this. I mean, it was either do it or die, but she ended up dying anyway, but that's not the point. I mean, she went into this thinking that it was only going to happen for, a month. She goes, oh, that's no problem. It's we could just stay in this, secret room back here, and, in no time, everything is going to be fine. 2 years later, they were still in this secret room, and they were like getting onto each other's nerves. There was another family that was with them. It was her mom, her father, and I think her sister, and then the other family was, a mom and a dad, and I think a son. And then there was another guy that was living there too, who was like a priest or something, or a pastor. So there was like all these people that were living in this small area, and they were essentially in jail. They were in, their own prison, their own, self-made prison, but it was their way of staying alive, for that short time. But for me, it's just, I tell people, like, who comes up and says, oh, poor me, or whatever like that, and their reason for being poor me is a really stupid reason. I'm like, read this, and then you'll, won't be saying poor me anymore, because that's just ridiculous. But if you haven't read this book, do. If you have read it, reread it. Because, I've already reread it, so I already know what it's about, and I already got what it's about from it. But if you read it when you were in high school, and you just skimmed through it just to get past a class or whatever, or in elementary school or whatever, if you had to read this just for, school, and you just skimmed through it, and you just got what you needed to get out of it, and then basically put it away or gave it to Goodwill or whatever, get it again and reread it, like, as a real book. Like, don't just skim through it and say, oh yeah, don't buy it if you're going to do that. I'm not telling you to read this, do it or die. I'm just saying you should, and get the message that's from it, because it's a really good message, and it's just like, you should always do what you, want to do. Like, you shouldn't put it off. Like, because you never know what's going to happen, basically. It's like, she wrote every freaking day for 2 years. Or basically, And she kept diaries, and there was, tons of diaries. This is not just one diary. If you look at the pictures in this thing, I don't know if there's where they were, in the front or the back. These were, diaries, and there's pictures in here, but I don't know if it was in the front or the back. It has to be in here somewhere. But anyway, I don't think it's in this book, but if it is, I don't know where it is. But they were, stacks of journals or diaries or whatever that she kept notes in and everything. So it wasn't just one big old long diary. It was diaries that was put into this book. So if you haven't read it, read it. Learn the lesson from the book. It's basically, I'm not gonna, I gave my interpretation. You read it, get your interpretation. Don't read Wicked, because that's a piece of crap. And check out Bone, if you have, Funny Bone, because one of them's name is Phone Bone, so it's kind of like Funny Bone. Otherwise, that will be the end of this episode. If you have a suggestion for a book to read, leave it down in the comments below. Subscribe, give it a like, all that jazz, because it will help me in the long run. I'm trying to make a go of this, people, and I would like to, perseverance can only go so far. I need your help to get me up off the ground. So, likes and subscribes are appreciated if you do, and I will see you in the next episode, which will be something really fun. So I'll see you later. Goodbye, everybody.